Soccer has this quality that most sports don't quite manage. A single moment, lasting maybe 2 or 3 seconds, can define an entire tournament. It can define a career. And sometimes, when everything lines up just right, it can define an era. The World Cup between 2010 and 2022 gave us a collection of those moments, goals that people still bring up in conversation, goals that get replayed not just on highlight shows but in the minds of anyone who happened to be watching when they happened. Start with 2010, in South Africa, the first World Cup ever held on the African continent. The atmosphere throughout that tournament was unlike anything before it, the sound of vuvuzelas creating this constant, almost dreamlike hum over every match. Into that setting came Landon Donovan, an American player who had spent years being underestimated on the global stage. Against Algeria, with the United States needing a goal to advance, Donovan followed up a loose ball in the dying seconds of stoppage time and tucked it into the net. What made it iconic wasn't the technique. It was the timing, the weight of the situation, the way it compressed an entire nation's sporting hope into one quiet, precise moment. He didn't blast it, he simply placed it, and the world responded. That same tournament gave us Andres Iniesta in the final. Spain against the Netherlands, extra time, the score still level, the tension almost unbearable. Iniesta received the ball just inside the box, let it drop, and struck it with his right foot in one smooth motion. The ball went low and true into the corner. Spain had their first World Cup. Iniesta pulled off his shirt and dedicated the goal to a friend who had died that year, and in that moment the celebration became something more than celebration. It became remembrance, and grief, and joy all at once. That combination is rare, that is what makes it last. 4 years later, Brazil hosted the tournament, and the football it produced was extraordinary. James Rodriguez of Colombia scored what many people consider the single best goal of the entire period. Against Uruguay in the round of 16, he received a long pass on his chest, let it bounce once, and before it could settle he volleyed it with his left foot from outside the penalty area. The ball arced perfectly, kissed the underside of the bar, and dropped in. The technique required to do that, in a World Cup knockout match, under that kind of pressure, is difficult to fully appreciate unless you understand how hard that strike actually is to execute. Rodriguez walked away almost calmly, as though he had simply done what needed to be done. Germany's 7 goals against Brazil in that same tournament will always be remembered for the scale of it, but within that match there were individual moments of real beauty. Toni Kroos, in particular, moved through that game with a kind of unhurried precision that made the whole thing feel almost surreal. And then in the final, Mario Götze, a substitute, controlled a long cross on his chest in extra time and volleyed it past the Argentine goalkeeper with his weaker foot. He had come on specifically to make a difference. He made the only difference that mattered. By 2018, in Russia, the tournament produced goals of remarkable variety. Benjamin Pavard scored for France against Argentina in the round of 16 with a right-footed half volley from outside the box that bent beautifully into the far corner. He had positioned himself at an awkward angle, the ball arrived at an awkward height, and yet the contact was almost perfect. It won the Goal of the Tournament award, and it deserved it. France went on to win the whole competition, and that goal was one of the reasons the momentum shifted. Luka Modric and Croatia produced moments of genuine grace throughout that tournament, a team built on midfield intelligence and collective belief. They played extra time in 3 consecutive knockout matches, which is an almost unheard of physical demand, and yet they kept finding ways through. Their spirit was its own kind of artistry. Then came 2022, in Qatar, the latest tournament in the sequence, and in many ways the most dramatic. The final between France and Argentina became one of the great finals in the history of the competition. Kylian Mbappé scored a hat-trick in a losing cause, including 2 goals in 3 minutes that brought France back from 2 down to level. His second, a volley in the box struck with composure and clarity, was as good a World Cup goal as any in the modern era. The fact that France ultimately lost on penalties doesn't diminish what he did. If anything, it gives those goals a particular kind of weight. Lionel Messi, finally winning the tournament at the age of 35, scored across multiple matches with the quiet consistency that has always defined him. His penalty in the final carried decades of expectation with it. Not theatrical, not spectacular in the conventional sense, just placed exactly where it needed to go by someone who understood precisely what the moment required. What connects all of these goals across the 4 tournaments is not speed or power or even pure skill, though those elements are often present. What connects them is clarity. In moments of enormous pressure, when the stakes are as high as they get in football, certain players find a kind of stillness. They see the situation, they make a decision, and they execute it. That gap between the pressure and the response, that quiet space where a great player operates, is what produces the goals people still watch years later. The World Cup, more than any other competition, provides the pressure. The players provide the response. And every 4 years, without fail, someone provides a moment that stays.